the Florida Writer Podcast, a discussion about writing and other things.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Florida Writer Podcast with your host, Alison Nissen. And today I am lucky enough to be with Kim Conrey. Kim, could you give us a 60-second elevator pitch about who you are and what you write?
Well, thank you for having me, Alison. It's good to be here. I write sci-fi romance, and I also write a blog about living with OCD. And I've written a memoir with my daughter about living with OCD, and it's under consideration with a couple of publishers right now. But my book that comes out in September, which is in pre-order, is called Stealing Aries. And I'm also VP of Operations for the Atlanta Writers Club. And I, like Alison, do a podcast, but with a few women called Wild Women Who Write, Take Flight.
Well, I've had the opportunity to be on your Wild Women podcast, and it was really fun.
You were a great guest. We had so much fun speaking with you.
Yeah. So tell me about the book that's coming out. So did you actually write it with your daughter?
Oh, yeah. It's called You're Not a Murderer, You Just Have OCD. Now, that book was about Harm OCD specifically, and Harm OCD is a type of OCD where you're afraid you'll harm yourself or someone else. Now, for some people, for example, you might be at a scenic overlook and you might think, my goodness, well, I could just jump right over the side. Wouldn't that be crazy? Or I could just shove my sister over the ledge. And for someone who doesn't have OCD or a sticky brain, they would think, well, that was a weird thought, and go on about their day. But if you have an OCD brain, you would feel sick, and then you might obsess over it. And then for the rest of the day, it would just scare you to death, or for the rest of the week, or for the next year. And then you might start performing a ritual, or if you turn the light on and off 10 times, well, that means you're not a murderer. Or if you turn your pencil at a 90-degree angle 10 times, well, then you're not a murderer. But then that's not enough. So you have to scratch your knee 10 times. It could be any ritual. Those are just a few. And so we wrote a whole memoir about it. And then I also have the sci-fi romance coming out in September. See, that gives me a break from writing about trauma. So I needed that because that's the fun project, the sci-fi romance.
So sci-fi romance, do we have aliens falling in love? Do we have
We do not.
creatures?
Now, the aliens are fun, but no, mine is a little more down to earth than that because it's on a terraformed Mars set 500 years in the future. And so I don't have any aliens, but I do have a Mars that's terraformed. And I always loved the idea that, say, you do colonize Mars and a catastrophe hits Earth. Well, you have these people on Mars that still need supplies now and then, because even if they're growing their own crops and even if they're fairly self-sufficient, what happens if a catastrophe hits Earth and suddenly we can't help those people anymore like we used to? And I had written that 4 years before the pandemic hit. And what I had done was I had written that a pandemic circled the Earth and we couldn't help the people on Mars. And so then when I was shopping it to agents, before the pandemic hit and during, agents started saying, no pandemic stories, because suddenly they were being flooded with pandemic stories. And I would say, I did not write this during the pandemic. I wrote it like almost 4 years before the pandemic. So I had to change that. And I had always been fascinated with the fact that Yellowstone National Park sits on top of a caldera. And some people don't even realize that. And so I thought, well, I need a new devastation to hit the Earth to strand the people on Mars, or at least to make it difficult for them. So I need to get rid of the pandemic. And so I said, what if Yellowstone blows? Because ash would circle the Earth for decades if it really goes up, and it could. They don't think it's going to happen anytime soon, but I mean, it could before too long. And so in the book, it does. And ash circles the Earth, and Mars is having a hell of a time now. And so that's the premise of the book.
Well, that sounds fun. I like it.
Thank you.
Yellowstone. Okay, so I didn't actually know that about Yellowstone. I'm one of those people. So
Oh yeah.
now I'm going to be obsessively. What's the word I'm looking for? Obsessing about.
There are some wonderful documentaries about it, and that's why there's so many wonderful geysers there, is because the pressure beneath Yellowstone is so great that those geysers are like, oh, faithful. It's going off at intervals just to relieve the pressure, beneath Yellowstone. And they keep tabs on it, and they measure the lakes out there, how much they rise every year. They'll rise, an inch here and there, because they're measuring, what's happening under the earth there to see when this thing's going to blow.
Oh my goodness.
Fascinating.
Oh my goodness. So did you found a publisher to help you launch your book?
I did. It's with Black Rose Writing. They're a small press out of Texas, and they've been great.
Wonderful. What's been your experience with, have you done any self-publishing, or you just do the traditional publishing?
No, I haven't. And I just admire the heck out of my friends who have self-published. It's so much to work and to learn, and it's just so much work. And I admire them. You have to learn so much to self-publish. Wow.
Do you have a marketing strategy that you're planning to use?
Yeah, I've been learning everything that I can. It's, should you concentrate on social media versus, newsletter? Like, where should you pour your time? Because you read all these different articles about what's best to spend your time and where best to spend your money. And what I had learned was social media is great, but the click rate versus when someone's scrolling through social media versus pouring your time into newsletter, as much as we think we delete junk email, the click rate on an email is higher if you build a newsletter than it is if somebody's just scrolling through social media and you put a link on there. So I've learned that spending my time building a newsletter would be better spent.
That's really interesting. I'm going to have to interview somebody who does newsletters sometime so I can learn more about it.
Yeah, I've been building mine and blog too. I enjoy blogging, and I've done more blogging, and I'm trying to build my blog on Stealing Aries, but I've done a lot of blogging for my Harm OCD website, because that's terrifying. I remember when my daughter said, if the images I'm seeing in my head are true, when she had these looping intrusive thoughts of harming herself or someone else, she said, if the images I'm seeing in my head are true, then I don't deserve to live. And because I had dealt with Harm OCD in the past, I knew, well, this is a form of obsessive compulsive disorder. She's not going to hurt herself or anyone else. But what if I was a parent who didn't have OCD, but my child did? That would scare me to death. Not only that they would hurt themselves, but what if I'm hearing all this stuff about school shootings and I think, is my child violent? Are they dangerous? I wouldn't know that this is a form of OCD. So I started blogging because I didn't ever want a parent to be scared to death like that. Somebody needs to tell them that this is a form of OCD, and I'm the mama that's going to tell them. And so I've been blogging about it and letting them know, and also letting them know, hey, I am not a psychologist, but pointing them to OCD International, a website where they can find a psychologist who specializes in OCD and Harm OCD and exposure and response prevention therapy, which is the gold standard that treats OCD and Harm OCD. And the address for my website is harmocdkimconrey.com if anybody wants to go check out the blogs and learn more about OCD and Harm OCD.
Well, thank you for that. Yeah, that's something else that I've not had to run across, and I can imagine it would be terrifying.
Oh, it is. It is. I found her in the floor, dry heaving and crying and telling me what was going through her head. And when I saw that happening, I was like, oh, baby, I hoped it had skipped her. But it didn't. I had gone through it when I was around 13. It tends to hit you in when you're going through puberty and teenage years. I guess there's something about that hormonal flood, that does something with the chemicals in your brain, and that tends to get worse around puberty. So, and my grandfather had it. The OCD tends to be familial. I mean, it doesn't have to be, but it does tend to run in families, like a lot of neurological stuff like that.
Wow. You learn so much by doing research and through experiences. And then when we're able to read about them in a book and in newsletters and in blogs, it really can help educate everybody.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. As much as sometimes you want to disconnect from the internet and all, it's been a miracle in so many ways too, because my goodness, so many people suffering from things like OCD and other, mental illness and physical ailments too. We can go online and not be alone, read somebody's blog that's going through something. That's a miracle.
Do you have any of your personal stories, antidotes that are coming out in your Stealing Aries book?
Oh, I do. I say that I wrote Stealing Aries, the sci-fi, to get away from the trauma. But, even then I couldn't quite escape advocating for something in it, Harlow Hansen, my protagonist in Stealing Aries, she's a bit neurodiverse because she has MERLD, which is mixed expressive receptive speech and language disorder. And what that is it's a processing disorder in the brain where when you hear conversation, it takes your brain a minute to catch up. And my youngest daughter actually has this. So it would be easy, like if her teacher didn't realize she had this, for them to think she's not paying attention in class or she's not following instructions, when she is. It's just her brain can't keep up. And so they have to talk a little slower. And if they're giving instructions, they might just want to give her 1 or 2 steps, not 5, because she's never going to, at least not right now, going to be able to process it all, because it's just a processing disorder. And they also have to give her visual aids. And so the brain, with the neuroplasticity, as she gets older, she's finding ways over, around, and through. And Harlow Hansen in Stealing Aries, she has that. And so I like the idea of looking at a character, even though Harlow's an adult, and seeing how that affected her and how it made her the adult that she is. And I think we need more books and more movies, like The King's Speech, for example. He was stuttering, and how that made him the person that he was, and how he grew, and how that made him a leader, and what that did for Harlow, and what it'll do for my daughter someday. And I think we need more things like that. And Alison, we discussed this as well, like something with like dyslexia, teachers working with kids like this, and I wanted there to be that kind of representation in Stealing Aries. So I was happy to present a character whose life was shaped by such. So it's called MERLD, Mixed Expressive Receptive Speech and Language Disorder.
So does Harlow have a lot more empathy because she has been able to go, as you say, around, through, over, under to get to the other side?
She does. Yeah, she does. And I believe it's made her more compassionate, and it's made her clever in ways that I don't think she would have been otherwise, and like with my own daughter, she was climbing and she could pick locks, these child safety locks that they supposedly kids couldn't defeat these things. And we would put them on medicine cabinets and things like that. We would go in there, and my little one, Bray, she would have them open, like she would figure it out when she was little, and the lock would be sitting there on the floor and she'd be going through the cabinets. So there's a cleverness, I think, when you have to overcome one thing and work around it, right? So yeah, and Harlow's the same way. Yeah.
Well, she sounds amazing as a character.
Thank you.
So what's new on the horizon for you? Do you have another book in the works?
I do. I'm working on the sequel to Stealing Aries. It's going to be a series, and hopefully I'll be hearing back about the OCD memoir soon. So you know how it is with publishing. It's publishing time is like forever. So hopefully I'll be hearing back about that soon. And still doing the Wild Women Who Write podcast, and we have lots of good authors there, and we talk with just a lot of amazing people. Like you were saying with your own podcast, you just meet so many great people and you learn so much. And so that's what we're doing, and just writing and writing more about OCD and keeping up with my blog, and so busy.
Well, Kim Conrey, how can people get in touch with you?
Okay. Well, like I said, they can go to Harm OCD, KimConrey.com. And they can also, for Aries, Stealing Aries, they can go to Aries-ascending.com. And there's every way to get in touch with me on that website, Aries-ascending.com. And you can sign up for my newsletter and get the first chapter of Stealing Aries for free. And I will be happy to get you in touch with resources for OCD. And you can learn all about it and learn all about my book.
Well, that is awesome. Are you ready to switch to our rapid fire questions?
Oh, goodness. Maybe, maybe not, but hit me with it anyway.
What has been your favorite vacation place?
Ireland.
Ooh, Ireland. I liked Ireland as well. Do you have a favorite soda?
Soda. No.
No, me neither. I don't drink soda.
I love tea.
Tea. You like tea? Iced tea?
Yes, iced tea.
Iced tea. Awesome. And what is your favorite band of all time?
Aerosmith.
Aerosmith. All right.
There was not enough of that in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. There was one picture of Steven Tyler flipping a bird at the camera, and that was it for Aerosmith.
Oh, how disappointing. My goodness. Well, I will be traveling to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame today. So thank you for sharing that. I'll make sure I go look for it.
Let me know if I missed something.
Well, Kim Conrey, thank you so much for stopping by.
Oh, thank you for having me. This is fun.
You have been listening to another edition of the Florida Writer Podcast with your host, Alison Nissen. Alison out. Boo! We're all done. Kim Conrey is a writer, runner, podcaster, and occasional cosplayer. Her sci-fi romance, Stealing Aries, is available for pre-order at Black Rose Writing and available everywhere on September 29th. When she's not working on more books, in the Aries series, she writes about living with the misunderstood condition of obsessive-compulsive disorder. She also serves as the Vice President of Operations for the Atlanta Writers Club and collaborates on the Wild Women Who Write Take Flight podcast. Kim lives with her husband, 2 daughters in Atlanta, Georgia. For more information about Kim and her books, visit Aries-ascending.com. Join the Florida Writers Association for a weekend jam-packed with networking opportunities, workshops, awards, book signings, a youth summit, and more. Starting Friday, October 28th through Sunday, October 30th, the Florida Writer Youth Summit, Saturday, October 29th. For more information, visit floridawriters.org. Until next time.